So now I'll go ahead and introduce the rest of my co-panelists. Haitham El-Zabri is a Palestinian-American organizer based in Austin, Texas. He's been a long-time activist for human rights, animal liberation, and environmental justice, and is currently active with the Palestinian Assembly for Liberation, the Austin for Palestine Coalition, and the Stop Bolero campaign. Joshua Troclair, please, is an organizer and baker from Jeanneret, Louisiana, and is a proud citizen of the United Home Nation. While currently working in the background side of the fight, he has and always will be willing to dedicate his blood, sweat, and words to the struggle. Richard Herrera is an organizer with the Houston chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America and is the current co-chair of the Palestinian Liberation Working Group. While he is new to organizing, joining DSA last May, he has since hit the ground running. And last but certainly not least, Zach Kopkin is a community organizer based in Olancha, New Orleans, land and water of the Homa, Chitimacha, Choctaw, and Biloxi peoples. Zach is a lifelong Southern Jew, born in Atlanta, trained in North Carolina, and residing in New Orleans since 2021. He is a member of Jewish Voice for Peace New Orleans, founder of Gulf Roots Collective, the Gulf South to Gaza Collective, a board member of 350 New Orleans and Alternate Roots, and a chapter organizer on Jewish Voice for Peace staff. He is proud to have been part of the Progressive Workers Union Rank and File campaign to align environmental nonprofit workers with Palestinian freedom. He is a current member of the Jewish Voice for Peace Union, affiliated with the Baltimore Washington News Guild. Zach is especially passionate about cultural organizing to weave together community networks across issues, identities, and geographies. And so, without further ado, I'm going to let Haitham start our panel off.
Thank you, Chloe. Hi, everyone. I'd like to first of all thank the organizers for highlighting Palestine in such a way. It is definitely one of the most pressing issues of our time, and it is truly horrific that something that is not too different from the Holocaust is happening right now under our eyes, live streamed, and allowed to continue with full, I emphasize, full backing of the U.S. government. This is not possible without the U.S. government fully enabling, endorsing, sponsoring, and encouraging it. So I just wanted to start out by making sure we're all clear on that. As a Palestinian, it is surreal for me to see what's going on. I'm still trying to process it all, and my thoughts are really scattered, but I'll try to cover some of the key points and hope to address others in the Q&A. So let me start by addressing the myth that is very common here in the US, that Jews and Arabs hate each other and it's a thousands-year-old conflict based on racial differences. This is, I think all of you know, this is pure nonsense. It has nothing to do with ethnicity and religion. This is a very clear-cut case of settler colonialism. It is in fact identical to the story of our indigenous siblings here on Turtle Island. And so this ideology that has been applied in Israel is called Zionism. How many people are familiar with that term and know what it means? Okay, about at least half of you. So it basically states that Jews should have a state of their own, and they determined that Palestine would be the place for that due to biblical claims as well as the location being a strategic asset for world powers. So at the time that Zionism was born in 1897, Palestine was under the Turkish Empire, the Ottoman Empire. And when it started, Jews started immigrating in small numbers to Palestine, and they were welcomed because Palestinians had no problem with that. However, at the conclusion of World War I, when Britain took over Palestine, control of Palestine from 1917 until 1948, World War I until World War II. During this time, starting in 1917, Britain promised a homeland for the Jewish people in Palestine. This is called the Balfour Declaration. They explicitly stated that they support a Jewish homeland in Palestine. And they started allowing thousands and thousands of Jews to immigrate. Of course, Palestinians started realizing that, this was not going to be okay. The Jews weren't there to live as equals, but they had, political ambitions of taking over and creating a Jewish state, which means anybody who's not Jewish is basically, that's not the state for them. And so, by World War II, Britain was weakened and left Palestine. By that time, Jewish gangs were heavily armed. During that time, Britain was disarming the Palestinian people. And so, as soon as Britain left and the UN decided to partition Palestine, of course, without consent or consultation of the native population, they decided that Israel could have 55% of the land of Palestine, even though the Jews were still a minority. This was not acceptable, of course. Why would anyone accept that? So the Palestinian, so war erupted, and the Nakba happened. How many people heard the term Nakba? Do you know what the Nakba is? Okay, so Nakba is Arabic word for catastrophe, and that is when Palestine was ethnically cleansed. 800,000 Palestinians were driven out of Palestine. And Israel was created, and the US immediately, within minutes, recognized the state of Israel. So, between 1948 and 1967, of course, there's been a lot of oppression of Palestinians, and then in 1967, an Arab-Israeli war broke out when Israel, I forgot to mention, by that time Israel conquered 77% of the land of Palestine. So you can see on the first map, and this is such a powerful visual because it basically explains everything. These were the Jewish settlements, and they were increasing, and then in 1948, when they took over Palestine, they took over 77% of Palestine. 77%. So what was left was Gaza and the West Bank, which were 23%. So the struggle continued, the oppression continued through all these years, because Israel really wanted all of Palestine, not just the 55% or the 77%. The fighting continued until in 1993, the Palestinian leadership capitulated without the consent of the Palestinian people and made a peace agreement with Israel, which basically made a compromise and said, we will accept a two-state solution where we will be happy to take back the West Bank and Gaza and create our state on that 23% of Palestine, and we will consider the conflict over. Which was a terrible deal, honestly. I mean, it's like giving away 77% of your homeland and negotiating the other 23%. Yet, this was not good enough for Israel. This whole peace process has been a charade, which Israel never had any intention to make any compromises. And so we've had, continued oppression of Palestinians, continued land theft, settlement building. Gaza has been under siege. So let me get to Gaza. Before I get to Gaza, let me talk about the Palestinian political scene real quick. There are three main political parties in Palestine. They are Fatah, and I'm running out of time, that's why I'm speaking faster. There's Fatah, PFLP, and Hamas. Fatah is the main party, and it's the one that the Palestinian Authority is dominated by. And they are the ones who've been making compromises. PFLP is a Marxist secular party that believes in a one-state solution with equal rights for all. So Jews, Christians, Muslims, Hamas both believe in armed resistance, and they have been deemed, for this reason, they have been deemed by the US government as terrorist organizations. Hamas, in my opinion, I mean, terrorist is a very subjective word. Israel is the real terrorist. But Hamas is fighting for the liberation of its people. They are not doing what they do because they hate somebody's religion. They are fighting for their freedom. In 2005, Hamas won the legislative elections, but of course this was not okay with the US, and the US encouraged Fatah to confront them and not allow them to rule. And that's when Hamas took over Gaza in 2007. And ever since then, Gaza has been under siege. So, this little area, Gaza, has been under siege since 2007. Anything that goes in or out is controlled by Israel. Every few years, Israel attacks and destroys and kills. And it's just an ongoing pattern which has now reached an apex. So, I don't need to go over the genocide, especially since I'm out of time, but let me say a few words about ceasefire. This ceasefire is nonsense. Israeli leaders have already stated that they have no intention of moving on to phases 2 and 3. So as soon as they get their most valued hostages, it is back to genocide. And this is something we all need to prepare for, to confront this. And the final thing I want to say is the US basically, again, I want to end this with the US being the main culprit of all of this. All of this is enabled by the US, and all of these issues, capitalism, racism, speciesism even, all of those issues, Palestine, it is all related, and the people perpetrating this violence are usually the same people, and in this case, the US government. And I just want to say the real battle is here, and as US citizens, it is on us to speak up for Palestine. Thank you.
Thanks, Oscar. I'm coming from General, Louisiana, which is about 7 hours away. Got in about midnight, and here I am now. So if I look a little whatever, that's why. As mentioned, I am a citizen of the United Home Nation, although I should note I don't speak for them, and I don't currently hold any role in an official capacity. And that's an important topic as we get on here. But real quick, I just want to say thank you guys for making us feel welcomed, and that this is a lovely space. I feel a little bit jealous of you guys because I come from a community background, especially from the church. We had a great space, and we had a new pastor, and I no longer have a religious home like that. So, thank you all for welcoming me here and for being in community with you all. But the big reason why I came here today and why I want to talk, besides the fact that I love my Corpus Christi PSA folks, is because of the fact that we need to recognize the Palestinian struggle is a united struggle for indigenous people. It's mired in many ways, which I'll get into, but from the basis, we have to understand that anytime you have international agreements or treaties, and they're constantly violated and they're constantly being picked apart, especially by the United States government, but by the community at large, it puts all other treaties and it puts all other agreements, especially for indigenous people, in the line of fire. There is a corrosive effect that happens. People no longer care about the international order, although anybody who's on the other side of things will let you know that it's always been flimsy at best. But nevertheless, it becomes harder and harder to hold people accountable to these things whenever it's under constant threat. Similarly, I would also like to say that, much like my friend Ethan here has mentioned, a lot of discussion whenever it comes to indigenous rights and indigenous sovereignty also mythologize our people as if we no longer A, exist, or B, if we ever did, we were some sort of figure who lived in total community with the land, but had to be civilized by a colonizing force. Which is the same way that they attack Muslims and their belief system is the same way they attack ours. As if, we believed in some sort of magical, all-bearing thing instead of having a complex and ever-changing society. I also would like to especially appreciate that whenever it comes to indigenous rights and sovereignty, there are certain people who, again, act as if it's fine in theory, as if it was something amazing that it sure would be amazing if it could happen, but there's just no way it could realistically happen. talk about any of the measures, to the point where many people who consider themselves progressive, except for the subject of Palestine, talk about a solution for the Palestinian people being, well, what if we just gave them reservations? As if we can't then point to America and then show just how well the reservation system has worked for us. This is also coming from someone who my tribe is still fighting for recognition to this day. And I don't know if we ever will have one, in part because our homeland is based on the coast, which is both completely overrun by oil and gas industry, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, and the fact that acknowledging us would mean a restoration of our mineral rights as well, which, you know, I can't help but notice that there's a little bit of a problem with that. We have giant oil refineries over where our spiritual homeland is. I would also just like to say, as we, point this out, that, as we fight for our own sovereignty and as we fight for our own recognition inside of the state, even if it's not politically convenient, Palestinian people also fight for it. And it is shown that because they are not recognized as their own state, that is why, at least in part, why Israel is allowed to run roughshod over so many people and why they are allowed to investigate themselves. Similar to the fact that a lot of times whenever there are indigenous communities who are under attack, our own sovereign rights are legally gone out the window anytime someone who is off the reservation comes onto a reservation and causes trouble. So they are sovereign in name only. Similar to the fact that we also deal with so many other laws surrounding our lands as well, and what we're allowed to do with them, and how we're allowed to conduct ourselves, not truly being recognized as a free and sovereign people. So the point here being is that this is a universalized struggle for indigenous rights and sovereignty. The ongoing effects of what's happening in Palestine, Gaza, and the West Bank are constantly putting our own people under threat. And it just goes to show, as our friends here will later go on, that the colonial project does result in fascism that rots the core of the people who inflicted it upon themselves, both in Israel and also in America as well. Once again, reminding us, as we said previously, that liberation means that we're not free until we are all free, and indigenous sovereignty means that we are not all sovereign until we are all recognized as such. We can no longer stand to be progressive except for Palestine. We can no longer stand to be mealy-mouthed when it comes to indigenous sovereignty and the recognition of our people. And the only way that is going to get better is if those who do have power are brought to task, and those of us who don't have power unite. Because they have money, but we have people. Thank you.
Thank you all. Again, I want to thank Corpus Christi DSA for having us here. My name is Richard. I am with UCDSA. I am the co-chair of the Palestinian Liberation Working Group. And I'm excited, again, to have you all here and be able to talk. We'll talk a little bit about genocide and ecocide and how that is apparent for what is going on in Gaza. To me, it's just so apparent, it's natural, it's like, breathing. The way we've watched it happen over this past year, and so hopefully, as I talk and go over some of the facts here, it becomes more and more apparent to you, everyone that's assembled here. I think the People's Assembly is a really good word. I go to one of my heroes, Fred Hampton, said, anywhere there's people, there's power, and then power anywhere there's people. So, I'm going to start out with the ICJ court case that South Africa has brought to their it lays out very well how this counts as genocide. There's 750 pages, 500 pages dedicated to mass casualties, 100 plus dedicated to intent that's going on. Oftentimes with genocide, aside from the mass casualties, you have to prove intent, and that's what the biggest part in this case is. But I think the intention is very clear, and a lot of Israeli politicians have flat out said their intentions. They've said these are children of the dark. They need to be eradicated. We need to cut off electricity and water to them. They can't be allowed to grow into terrorism. That is just something that was said by Nazis during the Holocaust. It is a pattern that is right there in front of our faces. There are also actions from the IDF soldiers themselves, dressing up in women's clothing, putting toys on display, blowing up places of worship, hospitals, directly bombing refugee camps. I mean, this is just clear-cut war crimes that will over the next 10 years, you'll see documentaries after documentaries, and then people will say, oh, how do we not recognize this? And you say, well, no, we recognize this from the get-go. You know, if you are paying attention, you're trying to learn, and you're recognizing the struggle and how it connects to indigenous people and Africans during international slave trade. I mean, it's all a pattern and it's there. The intent is clear. There's also the ICC arrest warrant for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as well as former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. There's been a ceasefire resolution 4 times at the UN, and the most recent one was in December. 158 countries voted to approve the ceasefire resolution. 158. The world clearly stands with Palestine, but the capitalist interests do not. And that is where we need to fight back. That's where we need to establish power. The second part, which I think is important for this assembly, is talking about the ecocide that's going on. It's often not really recognized. Of course, we want to stop the genocide. We want to stop people from being killed directly. But ecocide is different than genocide in the fact that it is more of a long-term thing. It is harder to recognize immediately, and it's felt over the course of time in how hard it is to recover from the damage that's being done. Specifically, since October 7th, there has been over 100,000 tons of bombs dropped, several times more than what was dropped in Hiroshima, powerful atomic bomb. Bombs that kill indiscriminately and pollute indiscriminately, as well as chemical weapons that also pollute indiscriminately. On top of the bombings that pollutes, there's also the buildings and infrastructure that gets destroyed, and then that takes time to repair, and that repair takes energy and resources and fuel, and it's just it's not a waste to repair it, but it's just, why did we do it in the first place? Why make that destruction in the first place? Especially when we're fighting so hard to secure our own planet and our own world. Rapidly, we're approaching 1.8 degrees Celsius. We're going over the Paris Climate Accords. So there's also, Israel's been using an AI program called Lavender, and I think we can talk about that as well too. AI right now is a big energy consumption, and it's just using more and more fossil fuels. It's another way of polluting this world, on top of just being an absolutely abhorrent system to use in the first place with little human oversight, and it's just indiscriminate in its bombing. There's also the olive trees that have been uprooted in Palestine, the natural environment that has been overtaken. Even when Israel seeks to replace those trees, they have campaigns for sending seeds and buying trees. This is just another way to bring a non-native species of plants into the environment and cover up the towns where, like Adam said, people had to flee for the Nakba. So it's not even good environmental cleanup. It's just bad for the environment. It's bad for the native population there. And then again, like Adam said, the U.S. is complicit because they have a interest in the region. They want to control oil and gas in the region. They want to use Israel as a foothold for attaining power in the region there. With Israel, with Saudi Arabia, we'll probably see over the next 4 years more ties to Saudi Arabia and how that will affect it. And again, hopefully you recognize too that while this is for sure a genocide, this is also an ecocide that will come back to haunt us as we continue to fight against climate change. Thank you.
Hi, I think I've been introduced already, but sorry I haven't been able to hear everything super well. But I am a member of Jewish Voice for Peace New Orleans. That's what I'm primarily representing today. I'm also a founding member of Gulf South to Gaza Collective. We have 7 members in the room with Corpus right now. It is an organization focused on building narrative power for climate and environmental justice across the Gulf South. So I wanted to be with folks who are organizing, who are building connections across identity building, forging connections as we already are today across our region, and being able to act together when necessary and to share lessons and resources all the time, as well as solidarity and resilience. But I really want to speak about bringing the story that you've heard so far home to the United States and exploring the material and narrative connections, the very direct material connections in particular between the state of Texas, between the Gulf South and the United States, to Palestine, and the Israeli apartheid genocide regime. So through the Gulf South Gaza Collective and other organizations like New Orleans Stop Open Israel's Ports, through the Stop Malaria campaign that Aidan is representing, we've done research and we've discovered, not surprisingly, that the same companies that are drilling, that are poisoning our communities here, they're sending those products to the state of Israel to use in their jet planes, to use to prop up their economy. We're shipping out weapons, materials all over this state. General Dynamics has a facility, both an office in New Orleans and a facility that produces missile casings just outside of Dallas. That's just one of the organizations that's complicit. In addition, our state governments in the state of Louisiana, the state government owns tens of millions of dollars in Israel bonds, which are similar to U.S. bonds, but they're really war bonds for the state of Israel. They are a losing investment, and they are undertaken entirely for political grandstanding, basically. So after October 7th, the state of Louisiana bought $20 million more in Israel bonds, which just props up the Israeli war economy and makes it possible for them to continue their campaign of apartheid and genocide. In addition to that, even more significantly, the constant, non-stop flow of weapons from the United States to Israel is the number one thing that makes it possible for Israel to continue its genocide. Every single plane that they are flying, every bomb that they are dropping, the planes are manufactured in the U.S., every bomb has components of the United States, if not entirely made in the United States. Billions and billions and billions of U.S. taxpayer money that is being put into bombing women and children, refugee camps, destabilizing this entire region that makes no one safe. And this brings me to the narrative around Jewish safety. This doesn't make Jewish people safe. And I'm sure you've heard that this is about providing a Jewish homeland, that it's about making it possible for Jewish people to be safe and guaranteeing safety for the whole world. And it just had nothing to do with that. Jewish people have been resisting Zionism since Zionism was invented in the late 1800s. My great-grandfather was a member of the Jewish Labor Front, which is a socialist organization in Europe that fought anti-Semitism, that fought for socialism in Europe and the Jewish community. And that tradition has been squashed by the Zionist project. Our language, Yiddish, is almost extinct because of the Zionist project that has put what was once a sacred religious language of Hebrew, turned it into something profane, profoundly unsacred, and used it to try to claim some sort of biblical right to historic Palestine. And we have right now in Congress Elise Stefanik, who's been nominated to be the UN ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, claiming that Israel has a biblical right to the entire West Bank. And so we know that so much of this Christian Zionism, in fact, but also paying lip service to some sort of solidarity with Jewish people, just couldn't be further from the truth. It makes us less safe. In particular here, we have Elon Musk doing a Nazi salute and acting like he can't be a Nazi because he's a Zionist. And in reality, those things go hand in hand. Zionism has been used in order to demonize anyone who is not so-called Judeo-Christian in this country, and it has created the potential for political repression of anyone who resists racial capitalism and imperialism in the United States. So much of the United States repressive regime of anti-democratic policies, of ways that they crack down on our organizing, is practiced first on Palestinian people. And that's made easier by acting as if Palestinian people wanting to be free, to have basic human rights and dignity, is somehow mutually exclusive from Jewish people or anyone else having human rights and dignity. And so it's really important for Jewish Voice of Peace, specifically, for us to show up alongside our Palestinian comrades, to play security roles in protests, speak out, to be visibly Jewish, to lean into our traditions, not to abandon who we are as Jewish people and our spiritual and ancestral traditions going back thousands of years before capitalism, before empire, before the United States, before Zionism, before any of that. But we're actually reclaiming those traditions, praying together and practicing what it means to be in true solidarity, and not making this story about us, but understanding that if we don't step in and say, we completely reject this, this will not happen, we're not going to allow that society to happen, supposedly for our sake, but in fact we're going to put our bodies on the line, and we're going to say that Judaism is meaningless, that we're not in solidarity with the Palestinian freedom struggle and with all freedom struggles. That's the essence of what Judaism is to me. And so I just want to make sure that anyone who's listening today understands that anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. It's really important that you feel brave and courageous in standing up and knowing that you know what's right. And don't let yourself be bullied or scared into losing sight of what's right. Ultimately, that repression, if you're not Palestinian, if you're not trans, if you're not an immigrant, if you're not a black woman, black person in general, black man being targeted by the police state, this repression will come for you. And it is being tested out through surveillance technology, through weapons, through every kind of repressive technology you can think of. It's being tested in Palestine and here in order to continue spreading the fascist movement and to tear us apart from one another. So if we can resist fear, if we can lean into our cultures, lean into really understanding the roots and shared interests that we have in this struggle, in all of our struggles. If we are fighting Chevron, and we're boycotting Chevron, we're making our communities here cleaner, healthier, and we're ending the genocide in Palestine. These things have to happen at the same time. So, I don't have a tidy way to tie that up, but I really appreciate y'all allowing me to speak to y'all from afar. I can't wait to come to Corpus. You're always welcome. Come stay with me in New Orleans. And I really look forward to continuing to build across this great region, the Gulf of Mexico. It's never going to be the Gulf of America, unless America is recognized as a continent and not a state. So thank you.
And it would be operating in the last remaining historically black neighborhood on the Corpus Christi's north side, who has already for decades suffered the consequences of living next to refineries like Valero. One of the clearest connections between our struggle against desalination and the occupation of our Palestinian kin by Israel was made clear when the port of Corpus Christi began consulting with Israeli desalination experts on the feasibility of the desal location in the inner harbor, even flying employees to Israel to tour the facilities there. The colonizers and capitalists have sucked dry our natural reserves and are reaching out to colonizers and capitalists in Israel who have wrecked the indigenous waterways of the region to strategize. And lastly, the last connection I'll make came from a report last year from Oil Change International that most folks probably know, right? That the U.S. continues to be a key supplier of JP-8 jet fuel to Israel. But what we might not know is that those shipments are coming from the Valero refinery here in Corpus Christi. The port of Corpus Christi is directly responsible for the genocide that is happening in Gaza. So y'all, there are many more connections that I'd love to talk to folks more about. So please come talk to us afterwards. We'll be here to the end of the assembly and afterwards. So I thank you for your time and your attention. All right, so we'll get into the next part of our program, which is to talk about some very active campaigns that are ongoing. So I'll go ahead and maybe hand it to Hatham first to start to talk about the Stop Valero, since I was just trash on it.
Thank you, Chloe. Yes, so Valero is, like Chloe said, sending the jet fuel that enables the Israeli jet planes to bomb Gaza. Right out of here. So there are campaigns against Valero. There is a local campaign called Valero out of Corpus. I'm working on a different campaign myself. It's called Stop Valero, and our website is stopvalero.org. Our goal is simply to disrupt those shipments one way or another. The campaign is just getting started, so if you want to get involved in it, just go to the website and sign up, and you'll get updates of our actions. This actually started as part of the global economic shutdown on April 15, when major corporations worldwide were targeted on the same day, and some of us targeted the Valero headquarters in San Antonio. Besides Valero, there's a lot of other campaigns that I'd like to highlight. Of course, there's the Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions movement, BDS. Who's heard of BDS? Okay, so this is how South Africa got taken down. And Israel actually considers boycott as one of the biggest threats against it, along with Iran. I think they actually said it was a bigger threat to them than Iran. So there's a website called bdsmovement.net. I think .com got hijacked by Zionists, so make sure you do .net. And you can follow up their current campaigns and targets. Another national organization that I deeply admire is called U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights. And their website is up there, uscpr.org. And they have multiple campaigns going on. Also, the Palestinian Youth Movement has a campaign against Maersk. Maersk is a shipping company that enables the weapons industry to get all those munitions to Israel. And so disrupting this would be a valuable target. Besides that, I want to echo basically what one of the things Zach was pointing us towards is I would put it in 4 words: think globally, act locally. So local actions are super important. There's an amazing DSA chapter here that's doing a lot for Palestine. So if you all aren't already involved with them, their table is back there. And I'm going to talk about what we've been doing in Austin. Actually, we have a really active DSA chapter in Austin that started a campaign called different stores. I don't know if it's national. Is it? It is? Oh, okay. Awesome. And so basically, yeah, I'll let you talk about that then. Other things we've been doing in Austin have been to target the city council and go there and speak every time, although we failed to pass a ceasefire resolution since it's super difficult being in Texas. It was still an opportunity to talk about Palestine and to make Palestine unavoidable. That's another important thing. We need to, an easy thing to do is always talk about Palestine. Wear Palestine, kufiyas, shirts, put a Palestine sticker on your car. And they have those at the DSA table for free, so make sure you grab one. I might see these all over Corpus. They are already all over Austin, where I'm from, so it's pretty cool when you see another, it basically boosts the morale of all activists to see that we are not a few. They want us to think we're a few, but the majority of the public is pro-Palestine. Other things we've been doing are protests, educational events, film screenings, book clubs. Community building is super important because otherwise you just burn out. It's way more encouraging to do activism when you have friends and doing activism with you. So yeah, I guess I will stop there and turn it over to Richard.
Thank you, Haitham. Thank you. So I'll start by saying, again, reiterate, BDSmovement.net is a huge place to start. I think it's very important for all of us to be active. It's great that you came out here for the assembly and you're using your energy to be here. Continue to use that power. Again, we're the people, we hold the power. It's the reason why unions need to be more prevalent. We are stronger together. And so we are stronger in our campaigns together. Fortunately, sometimes in the US, I think we're kind of capitalist-brained, and our way of being against something is by buying something else sometimes. Like, oh, let me buy local instead of this. Like, we just think of spending money instead of like actually disrupting and making our voices heard and going to city councils and using our power there. It's nice to buy local and that stuff, and to boycott too. Don't go to McDonald's, don't go to Papa John's, don't do Coca-Cola, Pizza Huts, don't get HP. Definitely stop shopping at Valero and Chevron. But joining a campaign and being active within your community is, I think, even more important. So let me talk about Houston DSA specifically. We have taken on the Boycott Chevron campaign from BDS National. We also do have a bit of a No Appetite for Apartheid, which is another national campaign that Haitham hinted on, where you go around to local stores and see if they will divest from Israeli products. No longer do that. There's a whole structure there. It is part of the National Committee for DSA, there's No Appetite for Apartheid. So if you're interested, please reach out about that. But specifically, our main focus is Boycott Chevron. Last weekend was the Chevron Houston Marathon. It is one of the bigger public-facing events, and to us, it doesn't make sense to have with the running community. We think that you're putting in all this effort and going towards a certain goal, and you're here for a common cause, oftentimes fighting against cancer or raising money for charities, but it's solely by having Chevron as the main sponsor. I mean, Chevron is destroying our planet. We're no longer going to have roads to run on and grass to run in with Chevron being there. So we've tried to make this a huge emphasis. Another reason for us having this as our main campaign is Chevron is moving their headquarters to Houston. They already have over 7,000 workers in Houston, and over the course of the next 5 years are going to be moving their main offices. So it's going to be a constant struggle now. They moved from the Bay Area, California. We've been working with people in the Bay Area to see what tactics they use. Specifically, they went to city council. And using those tactics, they also directly disrupted pipelines. So we will look into seeing how to do that. I would say just get involved, at the very minimum, and stop shopping at Chevron. That would be amazing. But at the maximum, get involved in your community. Get more people organized. Next week is a weekend of action. Chevron has their earnings goal. And there's a lot of other chapters of DSA as well as other organizations like JPP working styles of protest, whether it's writing letters to owners of the gas stations to get them to divest from Chevron, or it's writing letters to actual Chevron employees themselves. Definitely join an organization and educate yourself within the organization. So, thank you all.
So we're gonna have the most rapid fire closing statements. Such 2 sentences. We must be as connected, focused, strategic, and militant as our enemies. It is the least we can do to heed the call from our Palestinian kin to escalate. When we escalate for them, we also escalate for ourselves.
I think I'm going to stick with an oldie but a goodie quote that I have, which is to say, the old world has died, and a new world is struggling to be born. Now is the time of monsters. To which I would say, whenever there's monsters, there's also heroes, and I think it's time for everybody to find the hero amongst themselves, and to get together, and let's slay some monsters.
So I watched Al Jazeera a lot, and I've seen after the ceasefire something that I just can't wrap my mind around. I think if I was living in Gaza under a genocide for 15 months, I don't know how I'd be doing. I don't think I'd be in a good mental state at all, to say the least. But I saw a scene on Al Jazeera of people, lots of people, walking back to North Gaza to rebuild their lives. After all they've been through, just rebuilding it all, knowing that the ceasefire won't last and it'll be bombed again. But basically, it just inspires me a lot to see that resilience. And it reminds me of a sentence that says, I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees.
Yeah, I think I'll follow up that sentiment with a quote from Anthony Bourdain, who had said, Palestinians are the true definition of courage. To see their resistance in the face of endless slaughter is highly motivating. It's what keeps me going. I think of faces and names that I've never met before, but to hear their stories is what drives me. I just joined DSA in May, so I haven't even been active for that long, but I felt just incredibly motivated to come out. So I hope in some way, shape, or form you feel that motivation as well. You just think of someone, because there are so many stories from Palestine and Gaza to be encouraged by. They really do. Despite the bombing, you still see children dancing and laughing. And it's incredible. It really is. So I think in a closing statement, something else, another quote that I really have resonated with the past couple of days. One of my favorite singers, Jack Johnson, says, "The wisdom's in the trees, not the glass window." So we can spend time looking at our TV or our phone or out the window, but truly to understand and to learn and to grow, we have to connect with nature. I think we've learned that from native populations. Certainly, you have to connect with nature and go out and visit places, go out and see them, learn the cultures, be a part of it. That way you know what you're fighting for.
Very quickly, thank you so much. Everything everyone just said is completely spot on. What we witnessed in Palestine shows both the greatest aspects and the worst aspects of humanity, but most importantly, it shows us how deeply we are all connected in ways that maybe we've never seen before, and also how deeply interconnected systems of oppression are. And so we can't unsee that, and we're going to have to keep working together, staying tight, taking care of one another, and that's how we're going to be able to overcome and get free. On the slides, you'll just see JDP has a newsletter. It's called The Wire. probably one of the most influential publications in the anti-Zionist world. Hundreds of thousands of people read this every single week. I highly recommend that you get it in your inbox. It's a quick read and it helps you take action. There's also daily power half hours that JDP holds, opportunities for spiritual connection and taking action together in the afternoon every weekday. So just check out those links, and that's a really great way to get connected to the work that we're doing. And there are also 4 different chapters of JDP in Texas: Houston, Austin, San Antonio, and Dallas Fort Worth. So check them out if you know Jewish folks in your community. We're looking for community. We're looking for a home when our Jewish communities have rejected the values that we hold most dear. So please let them know about Jewish Voice for Peace if they're looking for a home as well. And thank you again.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Zach. Thank you so much to all the panelists. Again, we're silent.